Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. Faulkner University announces a 60% tuition discount for members of the Church of Christ. Now, there are some guidelines. This 60% tuition reduction is applicable to adult undergraduate Bible degrees or graduate Bible degrees from the Curley Graduate School of Theology in the VP Black College of Biblical Studies. You must satisfy all admission requirements and maintain satisfactory academic progress. You must remain continuously enrolled, including summers, until the completion of the degree. You must provide a letter from an elder or minister, preferably on church letterhead, verifying that you're an active member of a Church of Christ congregation prior to your initial enrollment. This offer applies to adult undergraduate degrees such as biblical studies, youth and family ministry tracks, and it also includes graduate degrees. And those are the Master of Arts in Biblical Studies, the Master of Arts in Family Life Ministry, or a Master of Theology, and it also applies to the PhD in Biblical Studies. For undergraduate inquiries, please contact Adult Enrollment, 334-386-7140, 334-386-7140, or Adult Enrollment at Faulkner edu. That is Adult Enrollment at faulkner.edu. For graduate inquiries, please call 334-386-7539, 334-386-7539. Graduate enrollment at faulkner.edu. That is graduate enrollment at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Experiential learning or experience-based learning is one of my favorite ways to teach. It's also one of my favorite ways to learn. Experience-based learning is basically how the skit team works. People don't just watch our skits. they participate with us as we do the skits. They use their imaginations. They create the scene on the stage. We basically don't use any backdrops. We don't use any props. We have a blackout stage and we're in black uniforms. And so when we're doing our thing, you create what's on stage. You have to interact with us and an experience, something that you do, something that you witness, an experience linked with an emotion becomes a memory. That's why the skits are so memorable, and that's why teaching in an outdoor classroom, that's why teaching on a challenge course, that's why using adventure-based learning, uh, whatever you call them, that's why they're so effective, because people get to participate and they get to learn. As a result of an experience doing something, you learn from what you processed yourself, but you can also make all kind of applications into life. That's exactly where facts, concepts, and applications come from. I've been able to do this a lot over the years. I first started out just taking people rock climbing and rappelling. I'd take young people who were at risk, people who were in trouble, people who had trouble with confidence or direction or trust, and I would let them climb or rappel with me. And sometimes just them having the ability and the courage and overcoming their fear, something very powerful would happen when they went beyond those self-imposed limits. Some of the most powerful things that ever happened weren't actually processed. We never talked about them. We didn't break down the facts, concepts, and applications. It's just something happened within a person, and they would tell you later, "Hey, I went climbing with you, or I went rappelling with you, or we came through your ropes course, and I'm different. I'm different as a result of that experience." Sometimes it's as powerful as you're standing on a rock site with a student, and you've let them climb or you let them rappel, and you've taught them how to use the gear, and you look at them and say, "Well, now it's my turn to climb. So you're going to be in charge of my safety." Because you see, trust works both ways. I've asked you to trust me, and therefore I'm willing to trust you. You're going to be in charge of my safety, and I'm going to climb. When someone trusts you, when they really put their trust in you and they believe in you, and then they're telling you, "I believe not only are you competent, I believe you're not selfish." And just that simple act of climbing with someone and letting someone else be a partner with you in this activity, it changes something. It fulfills, some of the Stephen Glenn stuff. I'm capable and I'm significant. It's the idea of, I'm going to invest in you because I trust you, and I think that you won't let me down, literally, if not figuratively. The confidence that you get from climbing or rappelling or being a partner in such activities is very, very empowering. It started with kids, and as I grew, it grew into an indoor climbing wall project at Lakewood. We built this little indoor climbing wall, and we did a series of climbing and rappelling. In the Lakewood gym, they had this really strange roof structure where you had this massive H beam. It's like an I beam, but it's stretched out. It went all the way across the gym. It made kind of this giant blue metal triangle, because you had an H beam that went horizontal, and you had an H beam that went like at a 45 or a 60-degree angle, and made this triangle that supported the roof. And we had it set up. We put a steel cable at the top with some rapid links, and so a rope could be run through that, and you could climb a ladder and then stand up on top of this H beam. Now, of course, you're safetied off. You've got the rope attached. But to get from the top of the ladder to the top of the beam, you kind of had to do a pamper pole thing. You had to stand with one leg on the inside of the beam, put a leg on the top of the beam, and move from the ladder to the top of the beam without really being able to hold on to anything. It's very, very enjoyable to see people get outside their comfort zone. It's very, very cool to watch people make that last step. And oftentimes when you take somebody climbing, you take somebody through a ropes course, or you take somebody through a challenge course, it's really not about did they climb it or did they not climb it. Gus Denzik used to say, it's not how high you climb, but it's how far you go. And so when we would take people through the challenge course, or we'd have them on the climbing wall project at Lakewood, or have them get up into the rafters and walk that I-beam and then rappel off, you have to teach them some code language. You have to teach them what we call the verbal exchange, or what we call the safety protocol. And basically, it's this idea where you begin to communicate with somebody when you're going to do this. And some of the principles that we talk about when we talk about climbing and rappelling is you've got to be anchored to something that's higher and stronger than you. You've got to be connected to a system. You've got to have a way to handle friction, but most importantly, probably you've got to be able to communicate with other people. And so there's this exchange that you give between the person who's in charge of your safety and the person who's climbing. Now, the person who's in charge of your safety line on a ropes course is sometimes called a spotter. But in actual climbing, that person is known as the belayer, Belay. It's a term that means to hold a rope safely or to hold the rope securely. And it's basically shorthand speech. Now, in the old days when I taught myself how to rappel, I would just simply yell down to my safety guy on rappel, which means I'm about to hook into the gear. I've already hooked into the gear, and then they would yell that they're on belay, and then I would yell I'm rappelling, and they would say rappel on, and that's kind of how we did it. What I learned as I became a facilitator and certified in some things that you ask the question on belay, and the person responds belay on, and then you say I'm climbing or I'm rappelling, and then they say climb on or rappel on. It's basically just shorthand speech. It's shorthand for are you on belay, and then the person responds yes, I'm on belay. But it's shortened because you're in the outdoor environment, and sometimes you're separated by quite a bit of distance vertically, and so you simply yell on belay, and then they respond belay is on. I'm climbing or I'm rappelling or whatever, and then you do that. Now we were teaching at the Lakewood gym, at the Lakewood project, and we had this big extension ladder propped up against one of these I-beams, and the students were supposed to climb this ladder and step up onto the I-beam. And so we had some kids in the gym, and by we, I mean myself and a psychologist named Dr. Mac Petty. Mac was one of our partners in the Keel Mountain Project when we had the company called Inner Quest. And Mac's a psychologist, and he's your typical psychologist. Mac's a cool dude. He's a neat guy. He's a very committed person to his faith. He's got strong family values, but he is what you expect. He's a middle-aged white dude with a PhD in psychology, and here we are in this gym with the young men and young ladies, and the cultural difference, shall we say, was quite a bit. And so we're standing here, and Mac is running this element. He's doing this thing where they're climbing the rope, the ladder, and then they're going to step onto this beam. And so we were standing there, and Mac has got this kid hooked in, and he's getting ready to go up this ladder. And a lot of times, regardless of what you teach somebody, regardless of what you tell somebody, and they agree, hey, I know the rules. When your heart rate elevates and you get into that fight or flight mode, and you get flooded with emotion, and you've got adrenaline pumping, sometimes you default. And so instead of looking at Mac and saying belay on, and have this psychologist with a PhD go, I am on belay, the young man looked at Mac and said, finna climb. And Mac said, I beg your pardon. And the young man said, I'm finna climb. And Mac said, I'm not sure I know what's going on. I said, Mac, are you on belay? He goes, yes, I'm on belay. I said, tell the young man he can climb. And so the young man climbs up to the top, and he's standing here at the top of this ladder, and it's probably 20, 25 feet in the air, but he's got to step. He got his right foot planted on the top rung of the ladder and the bottom lip of this H-beam, and he's got his other foot on top of this H-beam. It's probably an 18 to 20 inch step, and there's nothing to hold on to. You've got a rope attached to you, and if you fall, it'll catch you. But there's this kind of Karate Kid commitment move where you've just got to visualize yourself standing up. Now, if you're climbing and the person who's controlling your safety line is in charge of your safety, if you need to feel that rope against you more snugly, if you feel like he's not holding enough tension, you basically say take. And that means take the slack out of the rope. Or sometimes you can yell tension, and then a lot of times you can control how secure you feel. Well, people who've never climbed before like to feel that rope really, really pulling against them when they climb. Now, experienced climbers climb with a lot of slack. They don't want to feel like the rope is helping them at all. But if you're new to this, If it's the first time you've ever climbed a ladder and stood on an H-beam suspended over a gym floor, you kind of want that snug, secure feeling, like almost like you're being pulled up. Well, this young man gets to the top of this thing, and what he's supposed to do is simply tell Mac tension, or he's supposed to say take, because he wants the rope to be tighter. But he gets to the top of this ladder and he says, "Yo, dog, you're going to have to tighten this up," which again, Mac says, I beg your pardon? To which the young man explained, "Yo, dog, you're going to have to tighten this up." Mac looked at me and said, "What is he talking about?" I said, "Mac, he wants you to pull the rope just a little tighter. He's scared and he's nervous, but you've got to interpret what he means. You can't get lost in what he says." As an extension of the ropes coursework, I had this insurance policy. We were insured by Hibbs and Hallmark. We were also insured one time by Worldwide Outfitters and Guides. And they said, well, if you're running this facility up on Kill Mountain, then your insurance also covers you. You can have also insured. And so we were able to insure a couple of extra sites. I used Palisades Park. I used Cheehaw Mountain. And I think we used a place over at Fort Bluff. And we listed them in our insurance policy, and we could do guided climbing. And so I could take people out for a day, and I would often use this as part of my therapy. We would do what I call non-traditional therapy. We would take people out of the office and we would go, rock climbing, or maybe even an introduction to rappelling. And I've done that with dads and sons. I've done it with blended families. And I got to where I really enjoyed doing it with single parents, and really, really enjoyed doing it with married couples. And one of my favorite couples to work with was this little young couple who'd come in. They wanted to work on their marriage, and they weren't really in trouble. They weren't, a marriage in crisis. They just recognized that they worked together. They were either in the restaurant business or owned a restaurant together. And one of them was the head chef, and one of them was the sous chef, or the pastry chef. But what these young people had in common was they worked together. And when I mean chef, I mean chef. The funky little outfit and the Pillsbury Doughboy hat. I mean, these people were not just, hey, I cook. This was the real deal, Holyfield. These were little chefs, the little pastry chef, and then the head chef, or the sous chef husband. And so I decided it would be very, very good to take them out for a day of rappelling and let them learn to work together and overcome fears and talk to each other and do the communication. And we would do, some processing while we were out on the cliffside. And so we went out rappelling, and we'd gone through the orientation. I'd attached a rope to a tree, and we'd done some horizontal practice of how to use your gear and how you can close your hand and stop when you're rappelling. And so what I wanted to happen was that the wife trust the husband, the husband become the belayer. And so we stationed him at the bottom of the cliff. And his job was, while she was online, if she got out of control, for him to stop her. Now, I always use a secondary rope as a lowering rope, so if there's an entanglement or there's a problem, then I can take over the system. But they don't really know the technical parts of this. And so it's the husband and the wife, and the wife is going to rappel off this bluff, maybe 50, 55 feet. And the husband is going to be in charge of her safety, and they're going to have to develop this communication. Now, the problem with this is you're going to have to remember all these things while you're in a new environment and while you're a little bit scared. And so we'd gone through all our orientation, and I'd stationed her husband at the bottom, and he got down and was ready to go. And she's attached to the gear, and she's backing up. Now, you're only born with two natural fears. One is the fear of falling backwards, and one of loud noises. Everything else you're afraid of, you learn to be afraid of. And so she's backing up toward this cliff, which is unnatural, and you're attached to like an 11 millimeter rope, and she's backing up, and I double check with her gear, and I double check with her husband that she's ready for her to rappel. And you can tell by her eyes that she's afraid. Those little bright eyes are wide. You can see the look on her face, and there's a little tremble in her legs. And as she backed up toward the cliff, she checked with me. I said, I'm not the guy you're supposed to check with. Your husband's in charge of this, so you need to go through your communications. She looked over the edge, and as her legs were shaking and her eyes were wide, she yelled, "Creme brulee," instead of on belay. When you are scared, when you are upset, when you're unsure, when you're unsteady, when you're vulnerable, what you say versus what you should say can be quite different. Our fears, our frustrations, our negative fantasies, and our failures seem to have that effect on our filters. What I'm about to say, what I should say, and what actually comes out is a result of any number of factors that allow us or cause us to speak with the editing part of our brain turned off. It often happens when the emotional part of our brain gets in overdrive and the intellectual part of our brain is in neutral or park. Defaulting to saying what I usually say, what I normally say, the way I would normally say it, using familiar patterns, using familiar tones, using familiar volumes. Those are the communication habits and the things that happen to us when we interfere with our relationships, because instead of using a voice, instead of using words, instead of using phrases that help the situation, we tend to default into crisis mode and we hurt the situation. If we are used to being demanding or critical or demeaning, then what we should say versus what we actually say, the strange new mode of communication and the strange new type of words, not being able to default to that is understandable, because communication, like everything else, is a habit. And we learn those things and we practice those things, and what gets us our results gets repeated, and what gets repeated gets ingrained. But sometimes we don't realize that our communication style at work, our communication style with our friends, our communication style with people, maybe it's not the ultimate communication style. Maybe it's suboptimal, but when we get into crisis mode or we get into fear mode or we're frustrated or we're angry, we do default into the words we've always used. We use the phrases we've always used, and we use the tone that we've always used. We might be demeaning, we might be demanding, we might be critical. John Gottman, who's a very famous therapist, says that our complaints, things that we wish were different, things that we wish would change, things that we want improvement on, when you voice a complaint towards someone, you should state them as a positive request to have our needs met. Essentially, it's I want to learn to talk about the problem rather than talking about the person. It's an I statement versus a you statement. I want to talk about the what, or I want to talk about from my perspective. I don't want to talk about the who, and I don't really want to talk about you. I use this as an example. I'm self-employed, and because I'm self-employed, I'm sort of the master of my own schedule, and I'm self-employed. I like to deer hunt. Now, can anybody predict any problems with that? Well, my boss is easy to convince that I need the morning off and I can go deer hunting. So during deer season, I could probably hunt 3 mornings a week. I could probably hunt 3 afternoons a week. The places that I hunt are very, very close to my house. And so you have this pattern during deer season where I'm gone before the sun comes up and I'm not home until after the sun goes down. And if I get too over enthused about deer hunting and am gone all the time, my dear lovely wife may not like that pattern. She may actually want to see me in the morning, may want to eat breakfast together, may not want to have to wait supper on me until after I come back in. But if she's unhappy with that, she has a choice. She can look at me and say, "You're never home." Or she could say, "I wished we spent more time together." You see how one of those is from her perspective. I want to spend more time with you. I wish we spent more time together. But if she approaches it and says, "You're never home," well, I'm always home. I'm home every night. I come home every night. What do you mean I'm never home? And I can argue with what she's telling me about me, but I can't really argue with her about her. I can't tell her, "You don't wish we spent more time together." I kind of have to concede that point, whether I agree with it or not, whether I think we should spend more time together or not. She has told me I want to spend more time with you. And so she's made a positive request to have her needs met. But if she's angry or she's frustrated or she's mad or she's hurt or she's disappointed, what she should say and what she actually says might come out differently. When I first started teaching using the John Gottman method, I would tell people it's very, very important how you say things. This is not what you say, but how you say it. It's not what you say, but why you say it. It's not what you say, but sometimes when you say it. But in the recent times, I don't put the burden of how you say it on the other person. Now, it would be ideal if when I'm upset about something, I'm happy about something, I did not default into my familiar language. I did not default into my familiar pattern. But let's face it, when people are upset and angry and scared and frustrated, they say things they shouldn't say, and they say things in ways they shouldn't be said. But when somebody says something like that and it sounds like a criticism, it sounds like contempt, it sounds like an attack, as the listener, I should apply what I call the need filter to it. I should take what you've said and try not to react to the words you used or the tone you used or the way you delivered it, but I should run it through this filter. And when I filter out all the bad stuff, I need to see if I can find laying right there in the bottom of the filter the need. Based on what they said, regardless of how they said it, I filter out and say, this is what they're asking for. And then if I can use the need filter, if I can say, when this person says, this house is a mess, what they're really saying is not that I'm a terrible housekeeper, but they need more organization. If I can just simply filter out what you said and the way you said it and just look for the need, then I don't fall into the, I feel like you've attacked me. I move into a defensive mode, then we only focus on what's negative, and then eventually we begin to have, a withdrawal from each other because we get overwhelmed emotionally. If I only focus on the incorrect part of another person's speech, the words they use, the phrase they use, the tone they use, the regrettable part of that speech, or even the choice of the wrong words, they use inappropriate words. If I only hear what is wrong and I miss what they need, I don't know how to respond to it in a way that solves the problem. I don't know how to respond to it in a way that gives you what you need. Fitting to climb and yo dog, you're going to have to type this up, and Creme Brulee all basically need the same thing. Now, they're not even related syntactically, but what they mean is I need you to reassure me that you won't let me fall. I want to trust you. Help me trust you. Reassure me. See if I can ever make myself hear that request. If I can ever change the way I listen to you and figure out, hey, what is this, as unpleasant as it may sound, as incorrect as the phraseology may be, if I can just listen to what the person needs, I can change the dynamic of all the conversations. This is not permission to be abused. This is not an abdication of boundaries and limits. It's not a prohibition of setting up some respect boundaries, but it's just understanding that when people are vulnerable, when they're scared, when they're insecure, when they're frightened, when they're angry, when they're frustrated, when they're powerless, when I feel those kind of things, I might say the wrong thing. I might use the wrong words, and I might say it the wrong way. The point of this is if I can listen for your needs, or if you can listen to my needs, give me the grace to hear what I'm asking for rather than focusing on what I said or how I said it when I was scared, uncomfortable, insecure, or as it were, hanging by a thread. I may be scared. I may be in a spot where I'm unstable. I may be insecure, and I may just be in a deep, deep crisis. And I may say the wrong thing the wrong way. Instead of saying on belay, I may say creme brulee. But just because I'm upset, please don't let your common sense or your sense of compassion desert you. The mission of Heritage Christian University is simple. They aim to advance the churches of Christ by equipping servants through undergraduate and graduate programs. Heritage Christian University produces effective communicators of the gospel, focusing on evangelism and a commitment to Scripture. Heritage Christian University is accredited by the Association for Biblical Higher Education and offers the following degrees: Associate of Arts in Biblical Studies, Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies, Master of Arts, Master of Ministry, and Master of Divinity. Since 1968, Heritage Christian University, formerly International Bible College, has offered affordable degrees in biblical studies, allowing graduates to thrive in their ministries without the burden of loan debt after graduation. For more information about Heritage Christian University, visit www.hcu.edu. That's 3 W's and a dot, hcu.edu. Heritage Christian University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707. 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3 W's and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the donate here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.